Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to the third part of the Beginner's Guide series. So if you have not yet checked any of the previous ones, you can find them in the Dislike Guides playlist or via the link above. Now before we begin, if you found this video helpful, do consider subscribing. Subscribing is free and you can always change your mind afterwards. So for today's video, I will be discussing 10 common early game mistakes and how you can avoid them so that you don't find yourself constantly not knowing what to do or spending your time and energy inefficiently. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So common mistake number 1, which may not always be very relevant to a lot of you guys, especially for the early gamers, but the first mistake that I see a lot of people make is to spend your hard-earned Nexus crystals on summons. So you can go to the gacha over here, or rather they call it the Echo, and you can buy summoning tickets for 200 Nexus a pop. So there you go, you can actually just spend your precious Nexus crystals this way. However, this is definitely not what I would recommend. In fact, I would suggest that if you already have a decent roster of Espers, then you may want to try to avoid summoning this way. You may want to try to save your Nexus crystals on refills instead. But maybe some of you guys may not even know who are some of the Espers that are worth keeping and who are some of the Espers that would define a very complete team. If that's the case, you can refer to the tier list at the top. You can just look at some of the double S or some of the S or even the A class Espers that I have rated over there, and any of those would give you a lot of head start in the game. So when you are comfortable with the team that you have, start saving your Nexus crystals like I am on refills. And ideally, you want to use your refills on EXP grinding, which I'll talk about a little bit later, or Chronos 10 in the future. Now, the second mistake that I see, or rather a lot of people are also asking me this question: should I raise this specific Esper to 6 stars or should I keep this Esper at 5 stars? So they are asking me about like many different kinds of Espers. And honestly, the general rule of thumb for early gamers is to just raise your DPS Espers to 6 stars and keep your supports at 5 stars. So the reason why supports can remain at 5 stars is because they have a lot of utility that comes not just because of their stats but because of their skills. So generally speaking, you don't need them to have a ton of stat because they're not going to like improve your run times or anything like that by raising them to 6 stars. And in fact, most of them are highly usable just at 5 stars. They are able to survive because you're most likely going to be building them with a lot of HP and a lot of defense, which is unlike some of your 6-star Espers who are DPS Espers and they require a lot of additional stat, especially in their HP, because you're going to be building them with a lot of attack. So make sure that you only raise your DPS Espers to 6 stars for the early game. When you're progressing through the mid game and to the end game, that's when you can start to raise some of your supports to 6 stars. Now the third mistake is that I see quite a lot of players farming for relics. So if you go to trials over here, you can go to Ritual Miracles and you can farm for relics. And there's nothing wrong with farming relics, right? But the thing is, you're not farming the right area. So if let's say some of the early gamers, they're like farming difficulty 3 to 5, or maybe some of them even go as far as 7. In my opinion, this is still not good enough because as you can see over here, you may still obtain 3-star relics, which is rather poor, and you are going to outgrow them very quickly. So instead, what I recommend for the early game is to farm EXP instead. So over at each of these different maps, you can see this rainbow colored tile over here. So this is what you call a practice stage. You can see it at the top over here, practice stage 9. So do the most difficult practice stage that you can achieve. So if you can do all the way up to chapter 12 on Purgatory, that would be optimal. But of course, I don't expect any of the early game players to even achieve any Purgatory difficulty clear at all. So do as far as you can and don't worry too much about relics. Now another mistake that I see a lot of new players do is they upgrade their relics excessively. So for example, this plus 12 relic over here costs me about 45k per enhance, and there is a 25% success rate, which is still very expensive, right? You would expect to spend upwards of almost 200,000 just to fully upgrade this from level 12 to level 13, but that's only at level 13 and not even at level 15. So in contrast, if let's say you have a level 14 relic over here and you want to enhance this to level 15, it's going to cost you so much more. So you should expect to spend upwards of 540,000 gold just to upgrade from level 14 to 15, which is a major stark difference between level 12 to 13 and level 14 to 15. So for a lot of you early gamers out there, you are going to outgrow your relics very quickly. So there is really very little reason why you want to upgrade your relic to plus 15 at the start. Unless of course you suddenly luck out on some very powerful relic and you just want to keep it. So like for example over here, I lucked out on this, so I just want to keep it. So there is really no problem raising it to plus 15. But if it's going to be like a 4-star or 3-star or even some of the 5-star relics, there's really very little reason why you want to upgrade it to plus 15. So ideally for the beginning, you may want to stop at plus 9 or at most plus 12. The stat benefit is really very negligible anyway, so it's not really worth it. Now mistake number 5, apparently this is a thing, but some players are actually fordering some of the more useless espers, so to speak. So some of the 4-star espers that even me, sometimes I rate them rather poorly. Like for example, Arcana over here, right? So no one really uses him, but yet some people are fodering him. And as for me, I'm choosing to keep him, and in fact, I am choosing to resonate him and make him as strong as I can. And the reason why I'm doing this and not just throwing him away as material for a 5-star character is because the game is constantly going through a lot of patches on the Esper. So as much as possible, you want to keep all of these Espers because potentially they can become very powerful. So some of the Espers such as Joser, he has received a massive buff that makes him quite relevant right now. And if you are foolish enough to fodder him in the past, then unfortunately you're not going to be able to abuse his new kit over here, which makes him tremendously powerful. Now, mistake number 6. Okay, so this mistake, a lot of people are very guilty of this, is that they are farming Dahlia and Su-Hua as fodder material. So over here, some players actually farm Dahlia for fodder, but the truth is it is highly energy inefficient. So it costs you about 120 stamina for one Dahlia. However, if you do strictly just Purgatory with a 2x EXP, grinding EXP in some of the practice stages, you would then get 4-star fodder at the mere cost of just half, which is just 60 stamina per 4-star fodder. And of course, not only that, by farming Dahlia and Su-Hua from the Ripple Dimension, you're actually robbing other players of the ability to obtain their own pieces of Dahlia and Su-Hua. And you're also wasting your time looking at the chat because you're gonna be like looking at the chat for hours on end hoping that you achieve a Dahlia Ripple Dimension or Su-Hua Ripple Dimension, and that's just not going to be very efficient for your eyeballs and for your mindset. Now, the 7th mistake, which is not really so much of a mistake, but more of like personal preference, I would say. However, my personal preference is to farm with only one farmer. So for example, if you are looking at this, I'm only farming with one donor over here. But for some players, just because they want to do it a little bit faster because it may take too long, they tend to run with 2 fodder farmers instead. So they're going to run with like, let's say a Tang Xuan and a healer, or like maybe 2 DPS espers or something like that. But for me, I am someone who goes by mini-maxing all of my content, so I want to do the best that I can, and that requires me to farm as efficiently as possible. So what is efficient to me is to use one Esper to level 4 fodders instead. So do the hardest practice stage you can comfortably clear, and Mona, who is also the free Esper that you get from the start, should do it pretty fast. So as long as you give her the right relics, which is basically just the beginner relics, you're going to be able to run her solo and train 4 fodders each time. So that's really no problem over there. So the 8th mistake that a lot of people make is that they climb the point wall a little bit too quickly. So as you can see over here, if you are below tier 12, you would actually not be able to drop tier if you lose in battles. So for example, if I'm tier 11 and at 0 points and I lose one fight, be it I lose to an attacker or I lose to a defender, I will not go down to tier 10, which means that the opponents that I'm fighting are constantly getting harder and harder. So you don't want to be grinding point wall too fast, or rather you can do those at the bottom over here. As you can see, you don't actually get any point wall points from defeating them, so you can just grind these very efficiently and you would constantly be farming your point wall tokens, which you can use to buy stuff in the shop. So the thing is, if you lose a battle, you actually don't gain all the 14 tokens that you should have gotten. So if you climb too fast and you're not able to compete properly with the other players in the game, then you will find that farming for your shop is going to be a tremendous chore. So what I suggest you to do is to go to your defense, remove all of your espers over here, and just put one esper as your defense, and that would be good enough. So you're going to let people win you, so you're going to be able to maintain your current standing and face off with easier targets. So now the 9th mistake, right? So let's say you really need to farm relics for some reason. You may do so, but please do not waste your refills on lower difficulty Ritual Miracle bosses. So you will outgrow all these relics over here very quickly. So I don't want you to be spending your hard-earned Nexus Crystals this way. So if you really need those relics, then you can use your energy over here that you have recovered over time, but don't be using your Nexus Crystals on the refills over here until you can achieve, let's say, a Chronos 10 clear, or at least a Chronos 9 clear. And now for the 10th mistake, which is currently where we are right now. As soon as you can reliably farm Chronos 10, no matter how fast your team takes, okay, so even if it takes you 3 minutes or 4 minutes, you should start selling every relic that you get that is 5 stars and below from Chronos, and keep only the 6-star relics as the drop rates are really good. Okay, so you can see the video at the top, I'll link it over there. You can see how good the drops are after I did about 3,000 runs. So yeah, for my videos, I tend to do a lot of statistics, or rather I do as much statistics as I can, so do look out for such videos. And the way that you can auto sell your 5-star relics is you go to multi-battle and you go to relic auto selling over here, click star rating, and just select everything except for the 6-star relics. Cause the thing is, as long as you can clear K10 reliably well, you don't need 5-star relics anymore. You should be moving on to 6-star relics. Because there is really no real content that requires 5-star relics after you can beat K10. So Temporal Tower, for example, requires a lot of very strong relics, which means that you need a lot of 6-star relics at plus 15 as well. So you want to be saving both your gold and your stamina by selling all the unnecessary junk, which are 5-star relics and below. But of course, this is not so much for early game players. This is more for like players who are kind of approaching mid game at this point, which is also the reason why I saved this for the mistake number 10, which is also the last mistake in this video. So with that, these are the 10 mistakes that most players commonly make, and you should do well to avoid these mistakes as well, so that you can improve on your gameplay and you can find that my stamina is being used very efficiently and I'm progressing rather quickly. And of course, if you need other information and other tips on how to improve your gameplay and do a little bit better as opposed to the rest of the other players in the game, then feel free to subscribe to my channel for more Dislyte videos. So I do a lot of guide videos, so hopefully these videos help you in some way, and if it did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Subscribe for more Dislyte content, and this has been Free to Play, by the way, and as always, I will see you in the next video.